Why is Apple Music forcing us into Atmos? Today we're going to talk about it. I'm going to share my thoughts with you. We're going to get to the bottom of it. Now, I posted a video yesterday titled "The Music Industry is Over as We Know It." And that started quite the shitstorm. Now, for those of you that didn't watch the previous video, it basically came out February 1st that you would no longer get playlisted on Apple Music unless you submitted your music in Atmos. Now, there were a lot of people wondering where this article is, where was this press release in it? It wasn't. So it basically came out through the head of Warner Chappell here in Nashville, and it was a very much inside baseball thing. It was very much like the info was spread around to all the management teams and all the labels, and instantly everyone was on the same page with this. So there is no formal press release of this. It's a very much inside baseball music industry thing. Now, I have seen a couple people say that they did get playlisted even though they weren't in Atmos, but the overwhelming majority and everyone in the industry, all the A-list mixers that I'm talking to, all the managers that I'm talking to, every one of them is like, yeah, that's what's happening right now. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link it down below, but I want to go over why I think this is happening and then answer the top concerns. There were so many comments of people being like, oh great, so it's over for the little guy, the bedroom producer's out of work, just another money grab. How much is Sweetwater paying you? Like, so many ridiculous comments and lots of really good valid ones as well. I'm not trying to discount all of them. But today I want to address why I think Apple Music is going Atmos and all of the top concerns that you guys had in the comments of that video, because it's a lot. And I kind of failed to realize that it was probably the first time most of you were hearing about this, and I probably should have been more conscious of that and explain things a little bit better. So why is Apple Music doing this? Now, this is purely my opinion. My opinion is that Spotify has had the dominant market share of music streaming since its inception. Spotify dominates Apple Music in terms of total users and total plays. And I think Apple has been trying to figure out how to get this back. So something about a year ago, Apple Music took over all the TikTok streams. Now, I'm not really sure exactly how this fits together. All I know is that the majority of my clients, my paying clients, used to make way more money off of Spotify and get way more streams off of Spotify. And when this switch happened, they started making more money off of Apple Music, even though they were still getting more streams on Spotify. And it's because Apple Music pays significantly more per stream to the artist than Spotify does. So for that reason, I've always been on team Apple Music. I've never liked Spotify. I won't promote Spotify. Spotify literally tried to overturn the Music Modernization Act, which is the first raise that songwriters have gotten in like 50 years. Spotify bad. Apple Music just meh. That's how I've felt for years now. So I think Apple Music taking over the TikTok streams was their first step in trying to steal market share from Spotify, because all of a sudden all of my clients are like, oh, we should start pushing Apple Music as well as Spotify instead of only sharing Spotify. That was a massive shift in my clients and in the music industry. I think that was step one. I think this push towards spatial audio, which is basically Apple's version of Atmos, I think this is step two. As far as I know, this is not coming from the labels. This is coming from Apple Music. The labels are not saying, oh, this is fantastic, we need to do this. No, Apple Music is definitely pushing the labels to do this, for sure. No argument there. But I do think it's such an all-encompassing thing with all of the consumer products like already in place that I think that it's gonna work. And I think it's gonna steal market share from Spotify. I actually think that's what's happening. And also Spotify announced 2 days ago, I'll put the article down below, where they showed a photo of their new Dolby Atmos studio at Spotify. So, you know, Spotify is clearly feeling like they have to answer. That was 2 days ago. So I don't think Apple Music is trying to hurt the little artist, the independent artist. I don't think in all honesty, I don't think the independent artist is even in their peripheral. I don't think they care, or I don't think they even realize that it may hurt them. And also, by the end of this video, I actually don't think it's gonna hurt the independent artist, and I'm gonna explain why. So in a nutshell, Apple Music is trying to steal market share from Spotify, and it's working. But I want to get to the biggest concerns that you guys had that you left in the comments on the previous video. If you haven't seen the previous video, I'll link it down below as well, because there were a lot of valid concerns. There was a lot of ridiculous concerns, but there was a lot of really valid concerns. And so I want to address the ones that I think are the most important that will make the biggest impact on all of us. So the first thing that I want to say is this video does not have a sponsor. No one's paying me to say anything in this, and I'm gonna tell you exactly my thoughts. There's no sponsor for this video. These thoughts are 100% my own based on my own experiences and the people that I've talked to. So the first and most valid concern, I think, is what's gonna happen to the little guy? What's gonna happen to the independent producer, the up and coming producer, mix engineer, the bedroom producers? What's gonna happen to them? And this has been my biggest concern throughout this whole thing. But stuff keeps happening so fast. After I filmed the video yesterday, Universal Audio put out a press release that their Universal Audio Apollo X16 interfaces are now Dolby Atmos compliant. The newest software is already built into that. So you instantly have just a huge number, thousands or tens of thousands of people that already had that interface now instantly have access to mix in Atmos without spending a dime. That's huge. That sort of thing is just gonna keep happening for sure. So is it prohibitively expensive to get into right now? Kinda, but it's getting cheaper every single day that goes by. Now you can technically do it in headphones. There's a lot of questions about why can't you just do it in headphones? And you can. You can do it in Logic already, and you can do it in headphones, and you can do it with the Universal Audio Apollo 16X, which is the most affordable ways to get into it. Now I'm likely gonna go with an Avid Studio Matrix and like a HDX card, and there's a whole bunch of Avid stuff that I'm gonna go with, but there's cheaper options to get into this. The rig I'm going with for very specific reasons that suits my workflow the best. But yes, you can do it in headphones. Currently, the translation is not great. So if you do it in headphones, it doesn't really translate that great to the cars and to the actual Atmos systems. But at least you know it would sound good in headphones, which is the primary thing that everyone's using right now. So I think this is only gonna keep getting more and more attainable for the entry-level bedroom producers. Now I filmed that last video 4 times, and the other 3 times that I filmed it was very much doom and gloom. It was sharing all the same sentiments that you guys expressed in the comments, and it was only after I went to that Atmos Masterclass with Mike Miller, and only after he showed us what he does, and only after me and Ken Lewis and Jeff Braun and Joe Chechik and all these guys figured out how to move forward and only mix in Atmos and then use the stereo fold down, and the stereo fold down actually sounded better than the stereo master. We figured that out. Mike Miller is really the one who like pioneered this whole thing. This is going to be the future. We're only gonna mix in Atmos, and the stereo fold down actually sounds better than the stereo masters. None of us could believe it, but it is definitely what's happening, and this is gonna be the future for us. So in terms of knocking artists out, yes, it is going to be slightly more expensive for artists, but I think once we get these techniques out there and we get everyone on the same page, it's actually not really going to be any more expensive for artists, because we're not doing a stereo mix and an Atmos mix. We're just going to mix in Atmos, and then we're going to have the Atmos mix and the stereo fold down for the stereo mix. That's going to be the future. That's what all of us think. That's definitely going to be the future, which is going to mitigate the cost, the additional cost, really. Now, yes, us putting Atmos rigs in is gonna cost us, and in turn, we have to charge a little bit more, for sure. But just getting to the point where we're only doing one mix and it translates to everything, that's huge. Which brings me to my next point. Huge number of you were concerned about how Atmos sounds like crap when not listening in actual Atmos. And I agree with you. This has been my opinion as well. For the past year, the Atmos mixes don't sound nearly as good as the stereo mixes. And I I think we've solved that. This is very much reminiscent of when stereo first became a thing, and no one knew what to do, so they put the drums in the left and the bass guitar in the right. And now that doesn't happen at all because there were so many people that just didn't know what to do with stereo that it took a while before they started figuring it out. Atmos is going to be the exact same thing. There's going to be a lot of crap. There really is. There's already a ton of stuff that doesn't sound great. And that's one of the reasons why I have become so passionate over the past 3 or 4 days about educating people so we can get to the other side of shitty music really fast. So that way we can get to the point where we're doing great things that actually sound better than we used to do in stereo. Like, I firmly believe this, and I can't wait to share all this stuff with you guys as we get through this. So all that said, I don't think it's actually gonna hurt the independent artist that much, because I think once this becomes the norm, it's not really gonna cost them anything extra. 100% of my clients are independent right now. All of them. I have 0 label projects on the books right now. We're all doing Atmos for everyone. Okay, the next biggest concern is how are people going to listen to this? How is the grandma, there was one comment in particular that cracked me up. How is the grandma baking cookies for her grandkids going to listen in Atmos, or how is she even gonna care? Now, I would say at this point, the overwhelming majority of people that are listening to music in their homes are doing so with a smart speaker or a Bluetooth speaker. And the Apple HomePods and all the Apple speakers are already Atmos. And you can already, if you have 2 of them, they talk to each other and read the room and already output Atmos. So you're walking through the music as you walk around your house. It's wild. I'm not sure if Alexa is there yet, but it's certainly gonna be there. And that's gonna be the future. All the sound bars that you can buy today, half of the TVs that you can buy today already have Dolby Atmos in them. Now, yes, it doesn't sound as good as sitting in a studio with a ton of speakers. Of course it's not as good, but the consumer doesn't know that. The consumer just has this new interesting thing where it feels like sound is coming from everywhere. So the future of this is already in place because all of these consumer devices, a ton of them already support Atmos, and the rest of them are going to in like tomorrow, basically. And then of course, all the cars, like all the premium cars are now doing Atmos systems in the car, and that will trickle down over the next 5 or 7 years. I bet, and I'm gonna come back to this video in 7 years. 7 years from now, every car will be equipped with Atmos. Now, this is not any different than when stereo came along. It took a while for everything to convert over to stereo. It's not like that just happened overnight. No, it took a while for cars and for home stereos. And, you know, people used to have record players with just a mono speaker, one speaker. It took a while for this to become adopted, but it did become adopted and it did become the norm. Which leads me to my next point. A huge number of people in the comments were suggesting that this is just like surround sound 5.1, 7.1, that it's just a fad and it's not going anywhere. And I promise you, for the majority of the past year, I felt the same way. I really did. I was watching everything unfold and I'm like, is this the new surround sound? Because you're right. Surround sound was a big fancy thing. It was gonna be the new thing. And then it didn't become the new thing. And the biggest thing that I can say to that, and this is what I truly feel now, is that 5.1 didn't have the consumer electronic base already wrapped up. There was no sound bars, there were no TVs, there were no headphones. Regardless of how good or bad it is on the TV and on headphones, none of this existed. There was no way for them to fake 5.1. And so I think that the consumer electronics base is already so much more developed than 5.1 ever was, that I think that that's a non-argument. To me, in my mind, it's a non-argument and not comparable. Now, the same thing goes for, the adoption of every new format. I was a resistor of streaming when it first came out. Everyone was like, streaming's the future. And I was like, absolutely not. I will keep buying CDs because you can't make money off of streaming. And I was right. Like, obviously the artist income dropped dramatically when things went full streaming, but I was resistant to that too for years. For literally years, people were telling me streaming's the future. And I was like, don't care. I don't think it is. It's never going to be the future because we got to sell music. And I was wrong. And streaming is the only thing anyone does. You can hardly even buy a CD anymore. And I think that that has happened every time. When stereo became a thing, people were like, this ain't gonna last, this is a fad. When the cassette tape came along, people were like, this ain't gonna last, this is a fad. When CDs came out, CD players were thousands of dollars in the 80s, thousands of dollars in the 1980s. And everyone was like, there's no way this will stick around. It's too expensive. Who's gonna put this in their home? Because it costs too much money. Lo and behold, everything turned to CDs, and the same thing happened when streaming came out. I was resistant of streaming, and it is 100% the standard now. And I have been watching this Atmos thing unfold for the past year, or year and a half really, and I was resistant to it until we figured out what we figured out this past weekend, where we can mix once in Atmos, use the stereo fold down, you can print that to vinyl. Anyone who actually wants to only listen in stereo, we're gonna use the Atmos mix, the fold down of the Atmos mix to only listen in stereo. I am going all in on this because I actually believe this is the future now. 2 weeks ago, I was like, we'll see how long it lasts. Now I believe it's the future, and no one's paying me to say that. Let's get on to that. There was so many people in the comments being like, how much is the music industry paying you to push Atmos? How much is Sweetwater paying you? How much are these speaker companies paying you to push Atmos? So let's get to the full disclosure. I really wanted to go to the Mike Miller Masterclass. I really wanted to check out the new Focal room at Sweetwater. I asked Sweetwater to get me in the class, and they said, we'll get you in the class if you can get us more visibility on our Atmos rooms, because they didn't think enough people knew that they had Atmos rigs in their studios. Super fair trade. I wanted to check out the room, and I wanted to go to the class, and all I did was include them in the last video, and they didn't pay me to say that. They're not paying me to push Atmos. Trust me, no speaker company is like, you know what we should do? We should give Colt a boatload of speakers and pay him to make people think it's the future. Like, that's not a thing. My moving to Atmos is solely based on the fact that my clients are asking for it. I'm having to hire someone else to do it already, so I'm already losing money. And I actually believe it's the future. That's why I'm going Atmos, which leads me to the next point. So many people were asking what the ROI is, return on investment, of going Atmos. Now, this is a deeply personal thing that each one of you will have to decide for yourself. So while I do believe it's the future, I'm not suggesting that everyone should install an Atmos rig right now. I'm doing it right now, or as fast as I can, because I'm already losing money by not having it. You may not be in that case for a long time, or maybe ever. And so I want to be completely realistic with you. While I do think that it is the future, and I do think that we should really pay attention to this, and anyone who is able to move into Atmos should do it, there's no way it makes sense for literally everybody yet. Because in the beginning days, stereo didn't make sense for everybody until it actually became the standard. So the return on investment, one, I think you should be realistic about where you are in your career and your financial situation. And I think you should scale that based on what you can pull off. This is a hefty rig that I'm putting in, and I'm not going with the cheapest thing possible because I'm trying to work at a very high professional level. I am working at a very high professional level with tons and tons of, hundreds of songs every year. And like, I'm working at a very high level, and that allows me to do a higher level rig than I would suggest the bedroom producer who barely makes any money off of it do. It's two different worlds. And I think as more and more technology becomes available, the Dolby renderer just became its own Dolby suite now, and it's cheaper now than it used to be. You used to have to buy 2 pieces of software from Dolby. Now you only have to buy 1, and the 1 is cheaper than either of the 2 were on their own. And then now with this Apollo thing just coming out, like, there's so many things happening so fast that are making this more affordable. And I truly believe that this will be an option one day, that you'll actually be able to do great mixes in headphones. I truly believe that. We're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet, but I think it's coming. Now, the next concern that tons of you had is what's gonna happen when everyone is requiring Atmos mixes for distribution. And I'm not gonna lie, that's the rumors floating around town here in the industry. No one has a timeline on it. No one knows if it'll happen. No one knows when it'll happen. But the rumor is that one day you will have to submit in Atmos in order to distribute your music at all. Now, I don't see this happening anytime in the near future. I mean, I think this would be years before it happens, if it happens at all. However, I think that, you know, eventually the same thing happened with stereo. Eventually no one was doing mono anymore and everyone adopted stereo. And I think over time, this will be exactly the same. Okay, I think that wraps a lot of concerns up. I feel you guys on being hesitant with this. I really do, because that was me for the past year. And I cannot wait to get into this and start sharing stuff with you. And I cannot wait to help those of you who are interested or want to make the jump. I cannot wait to help you just get to the forefront of this as fast as possible, because some of these techniques, I actually genuinely believe that this is the future of music. It's so exciting to me, the creative side, and then figuring out how we're gonna use the stereo fold down. So in the interim, before this becomes the only thing people are listening to, we can only do one mix, and it actually sounds better in stereo than the stereo mixes. I can't explain to you how crazy that is to me, and all of us in that class did not believe it until we heard it and experienced it with our own ears. And I cannot wait to get you guys on the same playing field. I don't want this to be a me versus you thing, or a us versus them thing, or a damn the man thing. Like, yeah, there's some unfortunates in it for sure, but like, this is a really neat thing that we get to experience here. This is a cool thing. And I want to encourage people to accept the new things. Don't do what I did with streaming, because I did the exact same thing with streaming. I held out way too long and I didn't want anything to do with it. And I suggested that all of my clients didn't use streaming because damn the man, and you're not making enough money off of that. And all I did was hurt myself and some clients, because I was wrong. I didn't adapt fast enough, and I was wrong, and I encouraged people to be behind the curve instead of ahead of the curve, and I believe that this is the same scenario, except I'm gonna be on the right side of this. I hope. Who knows? Thank you guys for watching. I hope this helped you. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell tab next to the subscribe tab, because we're doing a whole series on Atmos, and I wanna feed you guys as much info as you can, even if it's years before you make the jump. I want to help set you up for success when you do make the jump. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.